all been there. Something has gone terribly wrong at work or at school or on the sports team or social circle, family, something like that. We have endured a terrible indignity. Maybe it's our fault. Maybe it's not our fault. But what are we going to do? We're going to go find some people who always have our back, who are biased towards supporting us, and we're going to go tell them about the thing. We're going to lay it all out. It's going to take a while. This might be an Applebee's conversation where we go and just sit at one of those high top tables and just say all the things we need to say. And then generally speaking, the role of the other person is to prop us up and make us feel better, even if they need to give us a little bit of negative feedback and be like, well, it sounds like a lot of people really mistreated you, but I mean, I think in fairness, you maybe could have handled this part of it a little bit differently as well. Hey, even that's welcome. That's okay. But we all know this drill. We have been in the seat where we listen and offer support. We have been in the seat where we needed someone else to listen and offer support. What you hope doesn't happen in that situation is that you go and you sit down and you get your giant 64-ounce margaritas and you start telling the story and the other person nods and listens a lot. And then you get to the end and they're like, you blew it. You're wrong about everything, and there's no way to recover from this. I think we should just ask for the check. You don't want that. That's a tough outing, because if that person who is your go-to person in your circle, whose fates are hitched to you and who is biased in your favor, tells you something like that, then that's bad. That's real bad. And that is exactly the situation that Haman finds himself in Esther chapter 6, starting in verse 12. After the big parade where Haman led Mordecai around and had to say that the king delights in him, after all that, Mordecai returned to the king's gate. But Haman rushed home with his head covered in grief. I imagine that he probably had to dart in and out of the back alleys to keep anybody from seeing who he was. And he gets there and he told Zeresh, his wife, and all his friends everything that had happened to him. Clearly, this is a man in need of support. How will they respond? His advisors and his wife Zeresh said to him, quote, "Since Mordecai, before whom your downfall has started, is of Jewish origin, you cannot stand against him. You will surely come to ruin." Oh, well, okay. But, I mean, he did some stuff wrong too, right, guys? Right? Guys? Anybody have anything like positive or supportive to say? I mean, he's really bad. This could work out. I mean, it could still work out. We still have that gallows out there. I mean, it's just a parade, right? I mean, poop will wash off my boots. It's just a parade. Just march around. It's not that big of guys. And everybody just kind of stands there with their arms folded, making sideways eye contact with him. Like, I don't really know what to say, man. I don't really know what to say. It looks like the bulk of this conversation, time-wise, because there is a timeline and a time crunch here in this passage. We'll get to the back end of that here in just a minute. It looks like the bulk of this conversation is him laying out everything that just happened, which is a pretty wild turn of events. It's pretty juicy. It's pretty interesting. And then it looks like the short part of the conversation, maybe like 1% of the total conversation, is all of his friends and wife being in agreement and saying, you're done. There's nothing you can do. I'm sorry. There's no upside here. And how must that feel if you're Haman? You got all of this narrative and all of this. I mean, you've been cooking up these plans with these people. This is your little evil circle of advisors and inner circle of buddies. I mean, this has been your thing for what, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? They've watched you climb the ladder and supported you. And every time something happens, you come home and you shut the doors and you're like, oh, okay, you will not believe what just went down. And then you giggle about it and you get excited and you pace around in circles and you break down what the other people are doing and what they must be thinking and what your next move is. It's this massive narrative. And then like your whole thing, your whole world just comes to an end with your inner circle in, let me see, are there any periods here? Nope. One sentence. The whole thing comes to an end in one sentence. Wait, that's it, guys? Hey, gang, like it's over? You got nothing for me? Yeah, man, that's it. You just told us the story. It's the end of the game. There's no more really to do here. I'm just going to finish off this drink and ride to the far reaches of the empire so I don't receive whatever it is that's coming to you. Wait, Mike, is this how you feel too? Sorry, dude. I don't really want to get hanged or gallowed or anything. I probably better go. Terry, Doug, Dave, Dale, really? And they all just kind of shrug, and then Haman looks at Zeresh, his wife. He's like, honey? And she makes that crinkled up face where you just like, where you shrug with your face. I'm doing it right now. Can you hear it? It's like, yeah, it's kind of how it is. I said what I said. But I think it's really interesting that in this ancient view of the world, even with all the biases that everybody has in this room toward supporting their likely meal ticket, they still have this strong sense that there's deities involved here. There's something bigger than our world, the fates, God, whatever you want to call it. And they're looking at this as something of a power encounter between their belief system, their deities, whatever, and the God of the Jews. And they're looking at it and they're like, that's a bad omen. Checkmate. Their God just won. I mean, look how they frame it. Since Mordecai, before whom your downfall has started, is of Jewish origin, you can't stand against him. And we know they're inclined to see it this way because when Haman and presumably his buddies sat down to figure out when all of this was going to go down, they thought of it as being something ordained by the heavens, ordained by the fates, the pagan gods or whatever. And that's why they consulted fate or the pagan gods by casting lots. And that is what set the date for when all of this stuff is going to go down, a date which has not yet been reached. In this book, it looks like the plan to kill all the Jews that Haman and his buddies cooked up by consulting the fates is going to go off the rails before we even get to the point in the calendar that fate decided. We know they think of this as being some sort of fate-oriented spiritual exercise, and we know that they view it as some kind of conflict between deities. And they look at this omen, they look at this parade that just happened. I mean, yesterday I speculated they didn't know about it. Maybe they did know about it. Maybe they were already sitting there freaking out and panicking when Haman showed up. So maybe they've had time to add all of this up and think about their conclusion. Or maybe it's just spontaneous. But either way, the conclusion is the same. This isn't just a defeat, it is a spiritual defeat. I think in ancient Persian parlance, what we're getting here when they say you cannot stand against him is it is ordained. The fates have decided you will come to ruin, and that's that. Maybe they imagine that by being objective now and siding with fate and saying it out loud, that they can somehow avoid those outcomes for themselves by distancing themselves. So I imagine these words hanging on the air like a pall, like an announcement of death. And then I imagine Haman trying to gather his own thoughts to somehow talk them out of it. And I imagine Haman being completely disoriented as his support system has seemed to have turned on him, and he's trying to come up with a way to make a case to get them to reimagine this, to reconsider what they think they're seeing. And that already 10 out of 10 tension of the moment goes to an 11 when there's a knock at the door. Who is the one who knocks? Verse 14 says this: while they were still talking with him, the king's eunuchs arrived and hurried Haman away to the banquet Esther had prepared. Did he believe what his wife and his friends said well enough to hurry over and try to give hugs to his 10 sons, to try to give his wife a kiss, or to give some sort of business instructions to the administrator of his house? Or was he in such shock that he just got ushered away, not sure if he should believe the tidings of dark fate that his friends and his wife had just pronounced upon him, or if he should try to muster some sort of optimism? Either way, in just one chapter, the reversal is so huge that this guy has gone from drinking and celebrating with his friends over a plan to kill his enemy the next day to the shame of the morning's events, coupled by the dark prophetic statements of his former support system as he's whisked away to face his fate. Such juicy stuff. I made a cool map of this whole era of Persia, and we're going to distribute that digitally to everybody who is currently supporting the program in any way, on any platform. If you're into that kind of thing, you can learn more about it at thetmbh.com/support. There's a link down below. Or you can also not support the podcast, which is also cool. Thanks, everybody, for being here. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour Podcast. Let's do this again soon.